Hey, so I just watched the Angry Joe's Bioshock Infinite review. Alright? I like the Angry Joe. I think he's a pretty cool guy. I like his reviews. But with the Bioshock Infinite review, there were just a few problems that I just wanted to voice. Just because, you know, I like to talk a lot. So, in his review, he talks about the Vigors, you know, in comparison to the original Bioshock. But I feel like that right there is the first problem, is that I know it's a sequel, but comparing a sequel to the original, I feel is never good for business. Like, you need to evaluate a game standalone, on its own, whether or not it's a sequel. And why is that? Well, because while you do have certain expectations going into a sequel than you would going into a brand new game, the fact remains that it's a brand new game, and it's a brand new, it might or might not have a brand new set of, developers and everything like that, different publishers possibly. Anyway, I feel like it's good to judge each game as its own game and not as its predecessor. That being said, that's not too big of a deal, but he says the Vigors, that the Cinder and Return to Cinder and Possession Vigors are the best, and that the other ones are kind of useless. I feel like that is just flat out wrong. I don't know. I think he mentions what difficulty he plays it at, but I played it through on the hardest difficulty, so I can inflate my EP. No other reason really than just to give me more of a challenge. That being said, the game was not very challenging at all. The game is all about story and not about the actual gameplay. The actual gameplay is rather stale. The Vigors kind of spruce that up a little bit, but the fact is that it's really aggravating to switch between your various Vigors. And I'm just going to start calling magic effects because Vigor just sounds weird coming off my mouth. Out of my mouth. Off my tongue. Out of my mouth. Okay. Okay, so Return to Cinder, basically what it does is it collects all the bullets that are being sent at you and lets you redirect them somewhere else in the form of like a red orb. And it's pretty useful, but it's actually kind of crap. And Possession is okay. Like, Possession allows you to either take control of an NPC or of like a turret, a gun turret, or like they have like these little hovering turrets that like fly around. And it's okay. The reason Return to Cinder isn't that good because you can only, like I said, it's a pain to switch between your different magical abilities. It's a pain to go from Return to Cinder back to like lightning or back to your fireball. And Possession takes up so much. I upgraded Possession twice because I used it, I think, twice the entire game. And because in the game you get so much money that you might as well upgrade everything. Like, don't be scared when you're playing the game to upgrade stuff because you get money all the time. There's never a time in the game where you don't have enough cash to do something that you want. And if you don't, well, you're doing something wrong. So, the reason I don't like Return to Cinder is because it's not as good as the other options, and Possession just takes up too much mana. Now, it's not actual mana, it's like salt, but same principle, right? It just takes up too much mana. Fully upgraded Possession and fully upgraded Mana Pool, you can only use it, I think it was like 4 or 5 times, and then you're out of mana. So not very good. And Return to Cinder would be good, except it's so hard to switch. I mean, really, you get the choice to use two magical abilities throughout the game. Any of the 2 that you want. And the 2 best I found were the Fireball, which also lets you place a fire trap, and the Lightning. The Lightning stuns, okay? Making the game, even at the hardest difficulty, a joke. Like, it's not hard at all because you have an ability that you can spam. Like, you're always going to have full mana going into a fight, and you can spam this lightning. And when you upgrade the lightning, it chains. So you have chain lightning that stuns, okay? So a group of guys, hardest difficulty, doesn't matter because they're not going to move, right? I'm going to stun them, use whatever gun I want to kill them, or go up and melee them, which I think Angry Joe kind of left out of his review. The melee is pretty cool, especially when you get the gear to set people on fire with your melee attacks. That fire does a lot of damage. You can melee one, go melee the other, go melee the other. And by the time you melee the third guy, the first guy's going to be dead from the fire. And keep in mind they're stunned this whole time because you're lightning shocking them. The game is extremely easy. He mentions how the last level was really hard, and I think that was because maybe he just didn't experiment enough with the lightning or upgrade the lightning or something like that. But the last level was really easy because, first of all, you have the best vantage points. You can skyline around and get on the very top levels of the map very easily, and then just lightning, use whatever gun you want. Which brings me to my second problem. He thinks the rocket launcher is really good. He makes like a big deal out of that, and most of his gameplay footage shows him using the rocket launcher. And I feel like that's maybe another reason why he had such a difficult time with the game. Excuse me. The rocket launcher is not very good. Yeah, even fully upgraded, it's just not that good. It takes forever to reload, and you have to be careful not to blow yourself up. And if you're into that kind of thing, cool. The game does give you those kind of options. So, if you want to use the rocket launcher, to use it. But I think it's the worst weapon because it takes so long to reload, because it's more difficult to aim than the other weapons, and because there's no point to ever use it. Like I said, every enemy, if you're using lightning, is going to be stunned, like, all the time. So, you don't need the rocket launcher at all. The last level is pretty trivial. If you lose the last level, it's probably because they don't do a good job of explaining what you have to do to win it. You have to protect the glowy blue thing. That's how you win the last level, is you protect the glowy blue thing. And I feel like the only acceptable reason for a good player to lose that is because they don't understand that. I didn't lose the last level, but that was simply because by the time the thing got to half health, I figured it out. But I can see how it's really easy to not figure it out. How you can just like miss the little visual cue amidst all the action, that's actually what you're supposed to be doing, is protecting that, not killing all the enemies. You're protecting that, and of course killing the enemies helps that. I think Angry Joe kind of underestimated the use of the Skylines. The Skylines are incredible to switch from basically one sniper point to the other sniper point, throughout the map. Almost every big engagement is going to have 3 or 4 different vantage points that you can navigate using the Skylines, and that's what makes the game so trivial, even on the hardest difficulty. You go to the highest point on the map, right? Shock somebody or don't shock somebody. Personally, I only shock people if they're in danger of becoming close to me. So I would save that. Sometimes people will skyline, like the NPCs can skyline too, and they'll skyline and jump onto your platform, at which point you just shock them and melee them. And they also make the game really fun, because it's fun to just jump on a skyline and then jump down back on a guy. Now, even on the hardest difficulty, the mobs have a really hard time hitting you when you're on a skyline. So, like, if you just got ambushed by like 3 guys because you didn't, you were busy sniping in one corner and then they hopped up behind you, all you have to do is hop on the skyline, hop back down to hit them, and then hop back on the skyline and rinse and repeat. The game mechanics are really bad. I'm sorry, bad is the wrong word. They're not really bad. They're really easy game mechanics, but the game stresses on the story. And because it's such a story-focused game, you kind of forgive that the combat is, one, ridiculously easy, and that there's not a lot of stealth opportunities in the game. Every once in a while, you'll come upon 2 or 3 enemies that don't notice you're there yet, but it's really hard. Like, when you come into that situation, most of the time, you don't notice it. It only happens like 4 or 5 times in the game that you come upon enemies that are unaware that you're there. Most of the enemies are already aware that you're there. So you miss the opportunity for stealth in that regard, that like you're used to enemies automatically turning and firing upon you, so you'll automatically fire upon them instead of set up some cool stealth approach that's more fun and interesting from my perspective. And secondly, there's not a whole lot of cool stealth stuff in the game. It's just not. It's not a game built around stealth, so I feel like they kind of missed an opportunity there. The gear packages that he talks about, they are kind of exciting if you change your gameplay style to adapt to them. Sorry, my ear's itching. So like with each gear package, it gives you an opportunity to kind of change how you play the game, and I feel like that's where the fun can be had in the gameplay style of Bioshock Infinite. Because if you just treat it as a regular shooter and you go through and just play through the game, even on the hardest difficulty, and don't pay attention to the story, it's just a good-looking shooter that's not very good. The story increases its value a lot, dramatically, but the gameplay still suffers. Now, the gear packages do give you an opportunity to play the game in a different way. There's a gear package where if you're low on health, you do double damage. So naturally, go down and get yourself to low health, then switch into that gear package and only rely on your shield. And second, once again, I like Angry Joe. I do like him, so I hope he doesn't take this criticism like personally or an attack or anything like that. But he just I noticed whenever he showed gameplay footage of him getting an infusion, with your infusions, you want to max out one or two things, either the shield or the mana pool. And you have enough of infusions in the game to max out two things. I'm saying that actually assuming that I missed one or two of them. I was able to max out my shield first, which I highly recommend, and then almost max out my mana pool. I was two little circles away from it, and I'm just assuming I missed one or two infusions. There's no reason to ever increase your max HP, ever, because cover is so easy to get. You can recharge your shield through one of the spells, the charge spell. Basically, if you charge an enemy, it refills your shield. And if you combine that with melee attacks and melee abilities, it provides yet another way to play through the game as almost a strict melee game, which is a lot of fun. I tried it on a few different levels. I saw that he went a lot of health and a lot of shield, which there's no point to ever do that, because the enemies aren't ever going to hit you. They aren't ever going to hit you. You might get caught unawares a time or two, in which case you take a few hits. But even on the hardest difficulty level, once you've got a few points on your shield, they don't do any damage. And then you just turn around and lightning them, and now they're stunned, you kill them real quick, and then you move on. There's nothing difficult about the game whatsoever. And once again, I would highly recommend maxing out your shield, because there's no reason not to. Like I said, there's a gear package for your health, so there's actually it viable to play through the game on low health. And once again, that's also really easy. I mean, basically you're just doubling the damage of things you're doing while all the enemies are stunned. You might think, well, you mentioned the fireball one too. Yeah, the fireball is just cool. I mean, you just throw fires at people and they blow up. It's really cool. The reason I'm not as huge of a fan of the game as everybody else is because I do feel like it's just a story game. It's another story game. But we don't have enough of those. There's not enough story games, and most of the story games suck, and the story sucks. This story game, the story's pretty good, although predictable. If you don't know what's going on halfway through the game, I mean, there's nothing personal, but I mean, it's easy. It's very transparent, the story. Halfway through the game, you know exactly what's going on, and basically you just have to play through the rest of it. It's very beautiful, though, the game itself. So that does justify playing through the rest of it. But the whole middle half, the whole middle part of the story, I almost quit playing it. I almost quit playing it because it was pointless. The story was not going anywhere. It gave us a few characters that I wanted to kind of like, but then wouldn't develop upon. Noticeably, the Chinese gun manufacturer. You spend a good part of the game dealing with him, but you don't ever actually get to learn much about him, and it leaves a bunch of unanswered questions. And I really do feel like people are sucked into the hype, including Angry Joe, which, he's a person, normally never gets sucked into the hype, but I feel like everybody giving this game such a high rating has really been sucked into the hype. It's a good story, and it's a really good looking game. And that's great. But does it merit as high of a rating as something like Far Cry 3? Hell no. Does it merit as high of a rating as any game that you're going to spend more than 10 to 20 hours playing? No, because that's all the game really offers is one playthrough. You can play through it again just to experiment with the different Vigors and stuff, but the problem is because you don't get some of the more fun Vigors, it takes you half the game just to get the lightning Vigor. I don't want to play through half the game just to get it back, even though that's my favorite Vigor. Well, there's other options, right? The charge melee thing. That's a lot of fun too, but you don't get that until even farther on in the game. So to me, it doesn't offer a lot of replayability because all the things I want to use, I don't get until the very end of the game. At which point, and a lot of games make this mistake. I mean, once you get halfway into the game, you already have a gameplay style for that game. You already have it. My gameplay style for Bioshock Infinite before I got the lightning was simply, firebomb, hide from cover, snipe with the carbine, and it worked beautifully. I never died. I died once, I think, when I went AFK. And then I adjusted my playstyle halfway through the game because the lightning is just that overpowered. But too many games do that now. They get you used to playing the game one way, and then it's like, oh, here, by the way, here are the rest of your abilities. And I mentioned Far Cry 3. Far Cry 3 kind of does that too. It's like you get used to playing the game with like one takedown and like your slide ability, because that's all you get at the beginning. And then, 20 hours of having played through the game with just that stuff, all of a sudden then it's like, oh, by the way, here are a bunch of other cool options. It's like, well, but I'm already used to playing the game this way, and while like I really like the idea of this new stuff you're giving me, I can't use it because I'm already using the other stuff. That's what I'm used to using. That's what I'm going to default to in a moment of like crisis. When guys ambush me, I'm going to immediately go back to what I'm used to doing. And I'm going to think to myself, man, that would have been really cool if I had done this. Like the Return to Sender, you get that like an hour or two before the very end of the game. Like literally like an hour or two before. So there are times like if an enemy ambushes you, you think, wow, it would have been actually really useful if I would have used Return to Sender right there. But because it's such a pain in the ass to switch Vigors, you're not going to do it anyway. You're not going to do it. It's a pain in the ass. Now, one thing is he doesn't like that you only get 2 weapons. I like that. In fact, I think they could have made it even better by limiting your ammo. You're basically never going to run out of ammo, no matter what gun you pick. Ever. And I think that's another missed opportunity. Because with only 2 guns, I really like the idea of 2 guns and sparse ammo. It forces you to kind of adapt to the situation, to try out all the different guns. But because Bioshock Infinite gives you infinite ammo, I guess that's what the infinite means, like infinite ammo and infinite mana. Like, you never run out of anything. And if you do, Elizabeth is just going to throw it at you. Which I'll get to her in a minute, but... So there's no point to ever switch weapons. Like, I think I stuck with the carbine and the sniper rifle, and then I think I switched to a light machine gun because I was getting tired of, like, my playstyle was just kind of slow, and because the gameplay, like I said, turned out to be really stale, I just kept going. And picked up a light machine gun and then just mowed through everything. Okay. Oh, one thing's really cool, the Gatling gun. I forget what it's called in the game, but the Gatling gun. You only can get one of those whenever you kill the reanimated George Washingtons, but whenever you get one of those, I mean, that's just the most fun. Like, you just mow everybody down. Doesn't matter what difficulty you're in. So, speaking of Elizabeth, she worked really well, except at certain points. I was tired of her giving me golden ammo, because she'll do that the whole game, give you golden ammo, and I was tired of her doing that because, like, I felt like a situation would be challenging. Like, I'm fighting like 5 or 6 different guys, I'm crouched behind cover, and I'm low on ammo, and I'm feeling like, hell yeah, like, this is where the game comes alive, right? Now I have to, like, use strategy, because I need to get more ammo, so I need to kill a guy, get his gun, use his ammo, and I'm running out of mana because, I've been using my Vigors, and no, she just refilled my ammo for me, and then she refilled my mana for me. Okay, well, that's okay. I'm in playing this game for the story anyway, even though I already figured out what it is. Okay. There is a slight twist. The ending is really cool. I'm saying the story's predictable, but that doesn't change the fact that the ending is really cool. I'm jumping around here. Elizabeth, so she... it's so pathetic. They tried to give her like these like emotional, moments in the story that are just completely ruined because, 1, they're terribly cliche, and 2, because as soon as she's done with her little emotional event, she turns to me and she says, "Here, I've got some gold, catch." I'm like, well, thank you for the gold, but I thought you were just having an emotional breakdown. And that's the second thing. The game doesn't allow you to have your own reactions to the story, because Elizabeth is your conscience. She's your conscience. So it's like anytime something messed up happens, she's going to tell you about it. She's going to tell you, well, that's really messed up. Anytime you think like, well, man, dude, like, I like that guy, but then again, he turned into this kind of guy, she's going to tell you. Where is my freedom of thought? The best storytelling is done whenever the author creates a picture in your mind, but doesn't actually tell you about it. So he creates a thought in your mind, but then doesn't come out and actually tell you the thought. Well, Bioshock Infinite would have been so great if Elizabeth didn't constantly echo my thoughts back to me. Like, if I thought something was messed up, let me think that. Don't have Elizabeth sit there and tell me about it. Like, that you're just killing my experience. And to me, that's kind of what Bioshock Infinite is they give you a great opportunity to have a magnificent experience, and then take it all away from you by giving you infinite mana, infinite ammo, and Elizabeth constantly telling me what to think. So, I would give that game 7 out of 10 at best. And, you should check out Angry Joe's reviews. I'll put a link. If anybody actually watches this. Alright.